in 2018 alone, ageism cost the U.S. economy about $850 billion.
Wow.
And if nothing changes or nothing's done, that number could increase and balloon to over $4 trillion by 2050. And what I think people don't realize is that people over 50 contribute more than $8 trillion to the economy each year.
Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. I'm your host, Jason Mudd with Axia Public Relations. I'm really glad you tuned into today's episode where we're talking about ageism in the workplace. And I am joined by an expert from AARP to talk about this exact topic. I'm so excited to make this happen. It feels like a timely topic in the current employment environment. And we want to make sure that you know more about the importance of eliminating ageism in your workplace. So with that, I want to welcome to the show our special guest, Carly Roszkowski. Carly serves as AARP's Vice President of Financial Resilience Programming, where she oversees strategy and outcomes across the organization's financial resilience and work and jobs initiative. In her role, she supports people over 50 years old in achieving their employment opportunities that they want by strengthening their competitiveness in the workforce, expanding access to meaningful work options, and championing efforts that reduce age discrimination. Carly, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to On Top of PR.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here too.
Yeah. So as we were talking before we hit record, I am going to hit the big 5-0 next quarter. So probably right around the time this episode goes live. We're recording it in mid-December 2025, and my birthday's in April of 2026. So what I'm seeing, Carly, is a lot of my colleagues who are looking for work right now are telling me it's hard out there now that they've, kind of are more senior practitioners. And, they've kind of asked me for help and advice, and, I'm supporting them as best as I'm able, but it seemed like an interesting topic. And then I'm hearing from more and more people my age that this is becoming a challenge for them. So I wanted to invite your reputable organization to come on and help our audience stay on top of PR by looking at their own organization with a critical lens to encourage and lead through these potential challenges in the workplace. And then also to help those individuals who are in the employment opportunity, are looking for employment opportunities that might be feeling impacted in this way or are being impacted this way. And so, Carly, in fairness, is this too much to tackle in one conversation?
Well, there's a lot we can talk about today, and there's a lot of resources and education that we have for 50 plus job seekers or those looking to change careers. But it's got to be an ongoing conversation, both with job seekers as well as employers.
Yes, I completely agree. This won't be a one and done conversation, but hopefully we can have some sort of impact on our audience. And regardless of, where the conversation goes, our hope is to help them, as leaders, as job seekers, as colleagues in the workplace, elevate and improve the employment experiences for everybody.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yeah, lovely. I appreciate that. So our topic is ageism in the workplace. Let's just jump right into how it affects seekers and employees who are over 50 years old.
Yeah, so our research at AARP shows that people 50 and older, 64% are saying they've seen or experienced age discrimination in the workplace, which is just super prevalent and unfortunate. And we see it even higher percentages for Black workers 50 and older and women 50 and older. And women tend to experience age discrimination early on in their career as well as later in their career. So more of like a U-shaped curve, unfortunately. And so AARP is fighting every day to end age discrimination in the workplace and educate consumers on knowing their rights, as well as educating employers on the value that older workers bring to an organization.
Right, for sure. So it's interesting you mentioned that because I don't think I'll be the first person to tell you this. And for our audience, as we were talking before, you've worked in, marketing for several years, so you're very experienced in this space. But in the PR business and in the marketing business, I mean, it tends to be a profession that is mostly female dominated. And certainly, a lot of young people begin their careers there, and some stick around and some change careers or do something completely different. So it's interesting you mentioned the U-shaped curve. And so I definitely want to explore that a little bit more. But let's start with what I think, sounds like a simple question, but it's probably not a simple answer, which is, how do you know when you are experiencing ageism in the workplace, or especially just during an interview, right? So maybe you're applying or you're interviewing, and I wonder if, it's one of those things like, what is it? There's several things in life they say, well, it's hard to explain, but when it happens, it's happening to you. But also, I think that, that perhaps it can be a real or perceived issue. And I'm hoping we can tap into tips and recommendations, regardless of if it's real or perceived, how to position yourself, and how to keep, an open, positive mind about it versus either thinking about it subconsciously or even bringing it up, which then could make it an issue that perhaps wasn't even an issue to begin with. And maybe I'm dead wrong about that. And that's why we brought in you as the expert.
Well, it's definitely there and prevalent in the workplace. But just to start off and sort of level set, according to AARP, ageism is defined as stereotyping, discriminating against groups of people or people based on their age. So just to level set that. And that it most commonly happens to older people. And it can be interpersonal or institutional, and it manifests in negative assumptions, again, stereotypes, about capabilities or a lack of respect, or policies that disadvantage particular age groups. So with that definition, and like you mentioned, we see ageism or age discrimination in the workplace happen at a couple different points. So some of the red flags within the hiring and recruiting process that we see is when potential employers are asking any age-related information, your birthday, your graduation year, in the hiring and recruiting process. So that might be on the application or in an interview. Those are red flags that they might be screening you out based on your age. We also see it happen in the workplace. So, and sometimes, to your point, we do it to ourselves, right? Oh, I'm going to date myself here, or
right.
We say that, and so we sort of manifest that ourselves.
Yes.
That someone is going to be, stereotyping us based on our age, or being biased or discriminatory based on what we've said and due to our age. But happening in the workplace, sometimes it's jokes, that people are saying in the workplace around age. Sometimes it happens where you're looked over for a promotion or an opportunity to advance. Sometimes it's older workers are overlooked or not included in training or upskilling opportunities. Or if you tend to see a pattern of your employer only hiring younger people, or during end of year performance reviews, some of the feedback you're getting doesn't align with your performance.
Carly, that's great. Thank you for your help with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I want to rewind to a couple of things you mentioned. The year of graduation on an employment application, for example, what would you prescribe as a best practice of that? Because I understand exactly what you're saying. And as an employer, I've referenced the year of graduation, and maybe in my head, just out of curiosity, tried to calculate maybe approximately, an age or a timeline of when they were in college and when they might have started their career, to be able to have a better picture of how many years of employment experience they have. But I also know employers will use that to go back later to do any kind of verification that they might want to do. So is that something they should ask for at a later stage in the interview process, as they've identified, let's just say Sally is the person we want to make an offer to? Maybe we've made her an offer contingent upon verification of her credentials. And at that point, they can kind of ask her to complete perhaps an additional verification form. Would that be a best practice? I'm giving away advice here instead of just asking my expert.
Yes, Jason, that's great advice. We recommend that on your resume, you want to list those important credentials, but you don't necessarily have to list the year that you graduated or the year you got that credential. And when you are given a job offer, usually you have to disclose more information or give references or dates so that they can further verify. So yes.
I like that a lot, because one thing we've been working on at our own agency is making it really easy for people to apply for a job, very easy for us to quickly identify whether there's somebody we want to proceed without asking them to fill out a multi-page application of which, we know very quickly that they don't meet the qualifications or the need for the opportunity. Because I don't know about you, but it's funny to me that people will apply for a job in PR because they're good with people or they're, had a customer service job, and they don't really understand, our profession is more driven by strategic communication than it is, necessarily being good with people. Although fans of our podcast know I say quite a bit, it's time we put the public into public relations, is kind of one of the cliches I say quite a bit. But, in the recent environment of employment, you have to move very quickly if you want to acquire the best talent. And so we've just looked at it and said, hey, I would hate for somebody, and I would hate myself, to fill out a very lengthy application only to get a quick no. So we've kind of started doing like micro applications. And I think I've already kind of picked up on a few things we could probably do to improve that.
Well, that certainly helps the job seeker as they're out there looking for opportunities. I'm curious, with these micro applications, are you finding, because it's so easy to apply and in the current workforce environment, are you getting way more candidates than you can sort of handle within your own staff and resources, where you have to use technology to help sort of cull down those candidates?
Yeah, when we first adopted an ATS, applicant tracking solution, that was a huge help for us, because then people weren't falling between the cracks. And now if somebody sends us an unsolicited resume, we basically kind of refuse it and say, hey, thanks for sending this, but this is not the way to apply, because, now we've got, 5 contacts at our agency saying, hey, somebody wants a job and, not sure what to do with it. So we just simply refer everybody, inbound phone calls, emails, et cetera. Like, this is the only place to apply. This is the only place we post jobs, and that kind of thing, to make it very transparent and very simple. To be honest, I don't think people realize when they're applying that it is an easier application online, because they're still clicking apply, and I think they're still going through the process. My hope was simply that they're not spending an hour or hours completing an application for a position that doesn't exist yet, or they're just not a good fit. So our hope is that they can fill it out in 5, 10, 15 minutes. And that gives us a good summary. We keep them on file. When they match to something we have an opening for, then we expand, the conversation from there.
Well, that's great. We do a lot of education to the older job seeker when applying for jobs to make sure that their resume does reflect some of the keywords found within the job descriptions. And sometimes they have the experience or the skills, they've just worded it differently. And with technology and these applicant tracking systems that most organizations are using, we're finding that when you include those exact keywords, you're more likely to sort of get past that applicant tracking system to show that you are, in fact, a good candidate for the role. But it's a good reminder for job seekers, with all the technology that's out there, to make sure you're paying attention to the words within the job description and what these organizations are looking for and how your skills translate into those jobs. We also look and talk a lot about job descriptions, both to the employer and the organizations as well, because that can be another red flag for age discrimination or bias. When organizations use words like digital native or marketing ninja, high energy, those words automatically make older workers think that they might not be the best fit for those positions. And so they might not even be applying to those jobs that actually might be a great fit for their skills and expertise. And as, talking to marketers and PR executives, words matter and imagery matters. So we talk a lot about making sure that the faces and the imagery that you have on your website portrays a range of ages, and so that all different candidates could see themselves at your organization.
Yeah, that's good advice. I've seen people post on LinkedIn of all generations, but I would argue geared a little bit more towards the younger generations coming out on LinkedIn and just saying, look, I'm not a wizard. I'm not a ninja. I'm not a guru. Don't describe me as that in a job description or, even a job title. And I've seen many of them just say, if I see that, I just stop. I'm like, this is just dumb. And I don't want to go work somewhere where they think I'm a social media wizard or a, design wizard or something like that. And I think it's, it depends on the culture of the company. I think some companies that's, just their culture and their way, but I also definitely can see where that turns off not only, discourages application from certain generations, but at the same time, I'm seeing, the generation I think they're trying to appeal to, looking at it and saying that it's kind of, disrespectful or unprofessional in their view.
We have a great guide, and it's a resource for HR executives and on the employer side, but it's say this, not that, and it goes through those kind of examples of instead of saying digital native, say something like ability to, navigate a digital platform or digital tools, more sort of descriptive of what the job and the skills needed to do the job.
Well, we will definitely get a link to that from you so we can add it to the episode notes at on top of PR /Carly Roszkowski, sorry, Rozkowski. Is that correct?
Roszkowski.
Yes. I'm reading from my phonetic spelling. Sorry. It's Rozkowski. And if you're watching this on YouTube or in video format, her name is right here on your screen. So that will make it even easier for you. But we will put a link to that in the episode notes so that it's easily accessible and you can check that out, because I know I want to look through that as well and make sure I'm sharing it with our team so they can improve upon it. I want to rewind just a little bit. You mentioned something that has always been fascinating to me. I'm glad you brought it up, which is, using the right terms and terminology and keywords in your submission, your resume, your cover letter, your online completion of the applicant tracking form or whatever it might be. We've done a lot of work with staffing firms and employment organizations over the years. And, we've probably been talking about this for 20 years. And my point in bringing it up is that it's still incredibly important. And I'm still surprised how many people, aren't taking advantage of thinking that through. And in the era of AI, it's even more important. If, like it or not, your resume has been, crawled and indexed for decades, and it's only being done more. And that's a unique opportunity, Carly, I think personally, and I want to lean into your expertise, but, I tell people mirror the language, reflect the terminology that you see in the job description in your application, and think of additional keywords to insert, almost like you're a search engine optimization expert, or find someone to help you with that so that you come up in the right searches when they're looking for your candidacy. Am I wrong? Do you have other thoughts? How do we take this and make it even better?
You are correct, Jason. We also talk a lot about networking. Now, for older job seekers, we tend to have larger networks. We've been in the labor market for decades, and we encourage older workers and job seekers to use that network. So if you're not on LinkedIn, to make sure that you're on LinkedIn, but not just be on there. To your point, making sure that your resume and experience is reflective of the job descriptions or jobs that you're looking at and reflects those skills. Make sure you're listing skills. I know that if you list at least 5 skills, you're 17 times more likely to be seen by the recruiters on LinkedIn. So there's advantages to listing those skills within your profile. Make sure you have a picture in your profile. Make sure you're talking to everyone, your neighbors, your former colleagues, your current colleagues, if it's appropriate, that you're in the market and looking for a new opportunity. Because networking and knowing someone is still a really great way to start your job search.
Yeah, I mean, I I think that's very smart. The more I know about what somebody's looking to do or has been doing or, whatever, just hearing from someone keeps them top of mind. And so I may not be thinking about somebody today until they reach out to me. And then tomorrow or yesterday, I heard some that they would be a perfect fit for. So I'm a big fan of that and just keeping your network aware of, what you're working on and trying to accomplish. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Enjoy 30 days free of Audible Premium Plus by going to ontopofpr.com/audible.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
I also want to just go back a little bit. You were talking about, I don't want to misquote you, but what came to mind when you were describing kind of common thoughts about different generations in the workplace. The one you didn't per se mention by name, I don't think, but the one that comes top to mind for me is technology. And at the end of the day, I'm a big believer that just because somebody knows how to operate technology and they're a technician with it, doesn't mean that they're great at what that particular technology can do. And to eliminate any being vague about this, I'll just spell it out. Somebody might be really good at using InDesign or Photoshop from a technical standpoint. That doesn't necessarily mean that person is an artist, right? And so I've been in this business long enough to see where maybe an art director did everything by hand and didn't use a computer and then had to learn how to use a computer. And then some, younger generation person maybe comes up and suddenly they know how to do everything within the software, but they just are a technician with the software. They really didn't have, I think, the advantage of knowing how to do something by hand and having to go and one of my first jobs was a darkroom technician, right? And you learn certain things working with your hands in that way that someone who's just clicking buttons will probably never fully appreciate and not necessarily have the same kind of, well, when that happens, here's how you do it, and could kind of engineer or reverse engineer the software to do something that they probably would have never thought of without that hands-on experience. So I'm a big fan of having the variety of experience, but maybe there's somebody listening, I guess I'm saying, who, whether it's imposter syndrome or reality, that, they're a little bit concerned about their tech skills. What advice would you give to them?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of misconceptions about older workers, and not being tech savvy is one of the biggest ones we hear.
Sure.
And actually, we put out a new report from AARP and LinkedIn just yesterday that shows from 2022 to 2025, workers age 50 and older increased their share of LinkedIn learning sessions on technology topics from 19% to 27%.
Okay.
It also shows that the share of disruptive technology skills, such as cybersecurity or data science, listed within LinkedIn profiles, has grown for workers of all ages over the last 5 years, which makes sense, but it's grown significantly more for older workers at 25%. Our research also shows that while there might be preconceived notions or stereotypes that older workers are just sort of complacent and waiting to retire, that they actually want to keep learning new skills. Right. 60% from our research, 60% of workers 50 and older have said that they would love to learn new skills for their job or on the job. So first, eliminating or tearing down those preconceived notions, those stereotypes about older workers and technology, because the data is showing different. But also get out there and learn it, experiment with it. We talk about, obviously, AI. Everyone's talking about AI and using it on the job, using it in your personal life. Experiment with it. Try different platforms. Ask it different questions. Practice learning and improving your prompts. And help others, talk to others about it. Talk to your younger colleagues, talk to other older colleagues that you work with about different new platforms or things they're seeing that they're doing or experimenting with. And we talk a lot about obviously, I think in the news recently, there's been a lot about AI taking over jobs. I think we're seeing it a little bit more in entry-level positions at the moment. But older workers, are also nervous about the uncertainty of how AI might show up in the workplace or what positions or jobs it might take over. Human skills, human durable skills, or those power skills or soft skills that come with decades of being in the workforce, AI cannot replicate. Those good communication skills, mentorship, leadership, problem-solving skills that you gain over time. And so we're finding that those are still highly valued skills and skills that employers are looking for. So older workers need to lean into that and make sure that they are communicating that they have all those skills and bring those to the table, as well as if you're in a job and making sure that you're using those skills with your younger cohorts or mentoring younger employees on some of the skills that you've learned over time. So I would just recommend experimenting, playing around with this new technology. Don't be afraid of it, and knowing that keeping the human in the loop on a lot of this AI technology is still really important. And that context that older employees might have or bring to the job is going to be super important, even when using AI. You mentioned, my husband's a graphic designer, but he's an illustrator by trade. And so there's, graphic designers coming out of school that don't know how to draw, and they don't necessarily need to anymore due to the technology shifting. But when I think about marketing, for example, if you, for your whole career, have 30 years or 20 years of experience writing a good marketing plan, a good mix of marketing channels and different avenues for promoting whatever you might be promoting. And all of a sudden, yes, AI could probably write a really sophisticated marketing plan. But if you're someone just coming into the workplace and you haven't written marketing plans or you haven't done them before and seen, how they actually do and the data that comes out of them, you might not know the AI marketing plan that spits out from, using ChatGPT or Claude is actually a good plan. So we're finding that for older workers, leaning into that contextual experience and knowledge that they have can really be helpful when pairing it with some of the new technology that's out there.
Excellent. I'm glad you shared that. I can't believe, how much, how far along we are in our conversation. I'm really enjoying it. And I do want to make sure we get to some of the other items we wanted to talk about and I feel like we've covered some of it, but the next thing I really want to dive into is what should someone do, Carly, if they're noticing ageism in their current workplace, if it's happening to them as an employee, or perhaps they're perceiving or it is happening to them as an employment candidate. What would be kind of your recommendations there?
Sure. I would recommend first to document everything. Just have everything documented, dates, times, other people involved perhaps. Document everything, but also know your rights. So I mentioned before, we are fighting every day against age discrimination in the workplace here at AARP. And we have advocacy efforts both at the federal level and the state level. And we have had some great success in states working with our state legislators and our state local officials to pass legislation that prohibits employers from asking any age-related information in the hiring and recruiting process. So if you feel that maybe perhaps you didn't get a new job or a new opportunity based on your age, and you live in a state like Colorado, and you remember that this employer or potential employer asked for any age-related information during the recruiting process, in Colorado, there is legislation that states and prohibits employers from asking that information. So know your rights, document, talk to your HR representative if you feel that you are being discriminated against based on age, or your direct supervisor.
Carly, could it be considered age discrimination if someone posts a job and they describe it from the beginning as being an entry-level position? Not necessarily an entry-level position. What we tend to
to discuss when posting jobs and job descriptions is trying to eliminate caps on experience. So let's say it is an entry-level job, but they are requiring maybe a year or two of some sort of skills and experience in order to do the job well. And instead of saying 1 to 2 years of experience, we say just state at least 1 year of experience, or experience in this industry is preferred, so that someone who might have had an entire career doing something different, yet they might want to switch to doing this new job or this new career. They might have managed people for decades, and now they want to be an individual contributor. They, at a different life stage, they have different priorities. They aren't looked at as overqualified or completely not even looked at as a potential candidate.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I think that's really good. I made a note here just to review all of our candidate material to make sure we're not asking any age-related type questions. And I also like the tip, when people say, 1 to 3 years of experience or at least or something like that, then I'm like, well, why don't you just be more specific? And is it 1? Is it 3? Whatever. So I like being more specific that way. Let's talk about how department heads can better lead and support multi-generational teams.
Yeah, so we educate a lot about the value of a multi-generational team, and by having a range of ages, either on group projects or within the team themselves, the different perspectives that can come out of that, research shows that there's increased innovation, increased creativity, better problem solving when you have a mix of ages, just like any sort of mix of different backgrounds or from different points of view. We do see the benefits across the board for an organization. So we advocate for inclusive cultures that benefit all employees, but also looking at, with 5 generations in the workplace today, most organizations do have a representation in a range of ages, and being more intentional about what a multi-generational team or organization and how that can benefit your bottom line.
Okay, perfect. Carly, my next question is going to be giving advice for employees and coworkers to foster a safe, diverse, and rewarding work environment. So what are your tips there and best practices?
Yeah, as a manager, most of us are managing people older than us and younger than us, right? I mentioned 5 generations in the workforce. We also have educational resources for employers on managing mixed age teams. And we hear that it's sometimes a pain point for organizations. But in our research, it shows that over 90% of people enjoy working with people of different ages.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Also, when looking at specifically older workers, research shows that 77% of people value working with older colleagues and value the skills and experience that those older colleagues bring to the job. Mm-hmm. So there are things like, as a manager, that I tend to look to help within my team and my organization, and that's acknowledging that there are different communication styles. And that might not always be an age thing, right? That just might be a preference thing. But
personality types.
The people I work with, if, how they prefer to communicate. Do they prefer email or phone or Teams? And then making sure that they know my expectations. I prefer, or usually I'm checking email the first thing I do when I get up, obviously all day long at the office when I'm not in meetings. And then the last thing I do before, plugging in my device and turning out the lights. So if you need to reach me or you want me to respond, making sure that it's in an email and you'll know that I'll be checking that and getting back to you. So setting expectations for communication is a big one. Also, flexibility. We know from all the research that no matter which generation or how old you are, people want flexibility. They want work-life balance, and they want to be respected and compensated for the work they do. And that is consistent across the board. And so we've we've worked with a lot of employers who have added flexible work arrangements into their organizations, remote work, hybrid work, part-time work, or just different schedules where you might be coming in later and leaving later, or coming in earlier and leaving earlier. Those types of flexible arrangements can help people of all generations. We also talk about other benefits that might help with an older working population, and those are things like phased retirement plans or programs. We here at AARP have caregiving leave, so if I needed to go take care of my aging parents who don't live in Washington, D.C., I can take time not out of my own sick leave or vacation leave to do that and help as a family caregiver.
Nice. That sounds like a very good employment benefit. Talk to me as we're wrapping up. I don't think we have time to go deep in this, but I don't want to ignore it also. And that is, earlier you mentioned, some of the data points of women and minorities in the workplace. Is there anything you wanted to share further, or in addition to that, or just maybe if somebody who identifies of those areas would, what advice would you give to them here?
Yeah, I mean, while ageism and age bias isn't fair, it's also expensive, right? And so in 2018 alone, ageism cost the U.S. economy about $850 billion.
Wow.
And if nothing changes or nothing's done, that number could increase and balloon to over $4 trillion by 2050. And what I think people don't realize is that people over 50 contribute more than $8 trillion to the economy each year. So hiring older workers is not only good for your organization and having that multi-generational mix within your organization to increase innovation and creativity and problem solving, but it's also good for the economy. And as we as a country see these demographic shifts, I mean, by 2034, there are going to be more people 65 and older than 18 and younger for the first time in our country's history.
Right.
We are also seeing 65 plus, 75 plus as the fastest growing segments of the labor market. And so if you're not thinking about that or adjusting your culture or your organization to support just the changing demographics themselves with people working longer, you need to be thinking about that.
So help me understand. So not employing older workers is costing our economy. Help me give me some examples of how that manifests.
So imagine you're 58 and you own a home, you're paying a mortgage. You might have children in college. You might have aging parents that need care. And all of a sudden, you lose your job. Research shows that 10% of older workers, when they lose a job or are pushed out of a job, only 10% are making the same amount of money or more when they re-enter the workforce. And so what we're seeing is that is hurting people's economic security, their retirement security.
Sure.
And so making sure that older job seekers, if you've been pushed out or you've left or you want to re-enter or you've needed to take a break in the labor market to possibly be a family caregiver or for some other medical reason, to make sure, as I mentioned before, the things we are making sure that we let older job seekers know is use your network. Like I said, talk to your neighbors, talk to your former colleagues you've worked with, reach out to folks who you might volunteer with, or if you're involved in a faith-based organization, when you're walking the dog, if you run into a neighbor, just your family, anyone, because we still see that time and time again, people are getting new job opportunities through people they know or through opportunities of someone who knows someone. So using your network, making sure that you're staying up to date on these changing and evolving technology resources. So you might have been in a job for 20 25 years. You might not you've never had to do a virtual interview. Making sure you're preparing for that. There's all sorts of tools and technology. We just launched a collaboration with Indeed, where we have a co-branded job board where older workers can find millions of job opportunities out there. They can get help with their resume, either through a free resume scan or resume writing packages. There's interview prep, and there's one-on-one coaching. So there's a ton of resources out there to make sure that you're prepared and that you are staying on top of sort of the changing labor market, demands, as well as the technology that has changed over the years.
Perfect. That's great information. I've just made a note to myself. I need to do more networking within my own network as well, and let them know, what I'm up to and what I'm looking for. Both with candidates, with clients, with service providers, etc. You're reminding me of a cliche of your network is your net worth, and there's also the cliche of it's who you know, but I actually think it's not. I think we think about that wrong. I think it's not who we know, but it's who knows us. So in other words, I could know somebody very famous, but they're not going to know me. But if that famous person knew me, that might be good, economically for my pocketbook, right? So I always try to encourage people to make sure that they're known, not just that they know people. But early in my career, I definitely benefited from having the ability to pick up the phone, have a conversation with somebody who could connect me or do something, and obviously look for ways to pay it forward first. So, yeah, I think this is good. This has been a really good conversation, Carly. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your smarts and insights with our audience. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance to address that you wanted to make sure we share with our audience today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jason, for having me. This has been a wonderful experience. And I would just say for those job seekers or anyone looking to change careers, you can find all these resources at aarp.org/work. And again, we have tons of resources and educational materials for the employer side as well. So guides on managing mixed stage teams, say this, not that, as well as intergenerational guides, ways for employers to set up intergenerational ERGs, or to add things like caregiving benefits to their suite of benefits for employees.
I love that. And thank you for the hard work and advocacy of your organization, for you coming on the show today to share these insights. I think that's very, very helpful and insightful. And hopefully that, somebody is, encouraged to be an agent of change within their organization, and that somebody has been able to, improve their applicant process, both as an employer and potentially as an employee. So if just those things start happening among our audience, I imagine this would be really good for everybody, both their employment fulfillment, the economy, and so many other ways. So, Carly, thanks again for being a great guest.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so with that, this has been another episode of On Top of PR. If you benefited from this episode, please take a moment and share it with a friend or colleague who you think would benefit from consuming it as well. You can send them a link to ontopofpr.com. Also, while you're there, do me a favor, find the button to leave us a review on your preferred platform. Please leave us a quick review so that other people can find us and benefit from the ways that we help you stay on top of PR. Be well.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.